The majority of films that you see in the cinema do a fine job of tying things up without too many issues, and if anything, they just fall into that mediocre but fine category. However, the films on this list actually seem like they went the extra mile just to piss the audience off. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Whatculture, and here are movie endings that were profoundly insulting. Glass. After M. Night Shyamalan delivered a major return to form with 2017's terrific thriller Split, fans hope that he cement his comeback with Glass, the capper to his covert superhero movie trilogy, which started all the way back with Unbreakable. And all the ingredients seemed to be there, but then that ending happened. Though Shyamalan quite cleverly sets up a generic superhero movie showdown between Willis and McAvoy only to subvert it by staging their final fight in a parking lot, what follows ensures that two of the movie's three protagonists suffer deeply unsatisfying fates. Mr. Glass, quite appropriately, has his bones fatally broken by the Horde, but as for McAvoy's hulking supervillain, he gets randomly shot by an anonymous sniper, and Dunn is drowned by another no-named goon. Then it turns out that Dr. Ellie Staple wasn't merely a psychologist researching people deluded into believing they're superheroes, she also works for a secret society that aims to suppress by any means necessary the existence of superpowered people. But in a final stinger, it's revealed that Glass recorded footage of the film's events, and it was uploaded to the internet, revealing the truth about superhumans to the world. It's almost impressive how far Shyamalan went to ensure fans wouldn't be sent home happy by Glass's ending. Though he certainly subverted expectations in a number of ways, the writer-director has taught us several times before how surprises for their own sake just won't cut it. Ultimately, this just felt like a giant slap in the face. Pixels. There are so many questionable things in Adam Sandler's painfully bad video game-themed comedy Pixels, but nothing more than its final moment, which represents the culmination of Josh Gad's romantic arc throughout the entire movie. But the worst thing has to be when Gad's character's crush, Lady Lisa, is destroyed, and then Cubert randomly decides to transform himself into the likeness of Lisa, and the two passionately make out. And then they seem to get married and have babies. It's so creepy, it's almost unreal. But in addition to making no sense at all mechanically, it actively butchers an iconic video game character by forcing him into a weird sexual relationship with Josh Gad. Just why? Jurassic Park 3. It's not really much of a secret that the third entry into the action-adventure franchise was a deeply troubled production, with the script still being written during shooting. As a result, its actual ending wasn't shot until reshoots 4 months after principal photography wrapped. And this does explain why the Marines just show up at the end of the film, and we don't get the man versus dino battle, which was heavily teased throughout the events and even in the trailers. Instead, what we get is basically 2 minutes of nothing, and then the end credits start rolling. Sorry, what? We're only at the 18-minute mark. Have I missed something? It honestly might be one of the most insane anti-climax in the history of tentpole cinema, given that the two prior Jurassic Park movies clocked in at over 2 hours each. For the threequel to last just 92 minutes and rush its way to a non-event of a conclusion is just an insult to anyone who ever paid for a ticket. High Tension. High Tension is a tightly wound, supremely violent horror film that is, for about 90% of its runtime, pretty good. And then it delivers an ending that not only unfurls the gnarly ride, but retroactively makes the rest of the movie worse. The bulk of the film is focused on two best friends, Marie and Alex, who are being pursued by a brutal serial killer, but at the end, the director just hurls out this wildly unnecessary logic-derailing twist that actually Marie is the real killer, who is deranged and in love with Alex, and the stalker of the film is just a figment of Marie's mind. This instantly breaks the logic of countless scenes we've witnessed, namely a car chase now rendered impossible, and even if you argue that we're witnessing Marie's jumbled mental account of what happened, it's still a massive stretch to make sense of it all. It was bold, sure, but an insanely stupid conclusion to an otherwise great movie, and bad enough that it's probably sworn many off from ever watching it again. Next, the It Was All a Dream ending is never satisfying, and though countless films have tried to reinvent such a twist in clever and imaginative ways, it almost always comes off as lazy above all else. That's certainly the case in Nicolas Cage's 2007 sci-fi vehicle Next, where he plays Chris Johnson, a Vegas magician with the ability to see into the future, who ends up working with the FBI to try and stop a nuclear explosion on US soil. And in the final moments of the movie, it appears that Chris has somehow managed to use his abilities to both save his new lover Liz Cooper and prevent the explosion, except Chris made a mistake, resulting in the bomb going off, killing everyone in LA. And at this point, the movie flings the audience back to the movie's midway point, where Chris and Liz are laying in bed, revealing that the last 45 minutes of the movie have simply been one of Chris's premonitions. Clearly, this is a case of a script that thought it was far more clever than it actually was, because that ending was nothing more than a cheap cop-out. The Devil Inside. 2012's infamous horror train wreck, The Devil Inside, delivered an ending so terrible, there were genuine debates about whether or not it was the worst movie ending in the history of theatrically released movies. The film ends with the remaining characters involved in a presumably fatal car wreck, and the supernatural antagonist's whereabouts is unknown, before a title card flashes up imploring the viewer to visit a website to learn more about the investigation. Audiences were incensed, awarding it an F cinema score, while many patrons asked cinema chains for refunds even despite sitting through the complete film. Quite rightly, viewers felt they'd been sold an unfinished experience, and it's an ending that's only become worse since, as the advertised website doesn't even work anymore. Fantastic Four. Whether you blame volatile director Josh Trank or a meddlesome studio in the form of Fox, there's no doubt that 2015's Fantastic Four reboot is a deeply terrible film filled with wrong-headed creative calls. It also is incredibly sad because it teased a sequel that never came. The final moments showed the team settling on a name after a battle against Doctor Doom. After the Thing, played by Jamie Bell, says that their progress has been fantastic, Reed Richards, played by Miles Teller, has a lightbulb moment and asks him to repeat it. Just as Richard prepares to announce the team's titular moniker, we cut to the film's closing titles. For starters, Avengers Age of Ultron did almost the exact same ending, far more successfully barely 3 months earlier, with its Avengers Assemble tease, while Fantastic Four served up an agonizingly contrived attempt to conclude on a fist-pumping high. The Open House. If you haven't seen the Netflix original horror film The Open House, well, firstly, well done, and secondly, don't. The premise is familiar enough. A mother and son move into her sister's for sale house and are almost immediately assailed by a seemingly supernatural presence, but with an atmospheric execution, it certainly could have been an entertaining straight-to-streaming romp. As it turns out, the family is actually being tormented by a serial killer, who at the end of the movie tricks the son into accidentally stabbing his mother to death and then strangles the son out in the forest. The final scene of the film sees the killer leave the crime scene and head to another open house to repeat his terror. And that is all. Just lazy writing and no development, making this 94 minutes of your time wasted.